So today we are joined by 5 Treasure Valley Children's Theater alumni who have moved on to college and have great things to share with us. And I'm very excited to start our introductions. And panelists, as I introduce you, I am going to ask you to respond to the question or share with us a memory or something that you really loved about your time with Treasure Valley Children's Theater. Total self-promotion time, but that's what I want you to do. So I am going to start our introductions with Michelle Carter Cram. Michelle is a rising junior at Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, New York, where she is concentrating in theater. She's been acting with and learning from Treasure Valley Children's Theater since our very first show. Actually, probably before that, because she did some training with us. She was in Schoolhouse Rock Live Junior in 2013, and also in Peter Pan Junior, Annie Junior, Into the Woods Junior. She was featured in our adult company production of Little Women as Beth, and was in Willy Wonka Jr. in the title role. She has worked with Treasure Valley Children's Theater as an assistant teacher, an administrative assistant, a sponsorship manager, a director, an usher, a crew member, a stage manager, is basically grooming to take over my job. Ladies and gentlemen, proud to present Michelle Carter Cram. Michelle, share a memory or a story, would ya?
Hi team, I miss all your faces. Okay, so I would say one of my favorite memories, there are a lot, but like off the top of my head, I remember a specific moment. I was actually in one of the TVC buildings where I was like, I want to do theater for the rest of my life. And it was not in the title role of any production. It was not in the adult company production. It was while I was backstage rehearsal as the usherette in Annie. And I don't know if any of y'all saw that production, but the usherette has one line. It was a great line. Immediate seating. But it wasn't a big role, but I was backstage, other people were rehearsing. I think we were on a snack break. And I don't quite know what it was, but I was just looking around at people, and I was looking around at like my friends. It was a good old Saturday afternoon, and I was like, you know what? This is the thing that makes me happiest in the world. And I think that's kind of special. I just remember it being a very distinct moment, me thinking to myself, yep, I want to do this forever.
That is a phenomenal memory. Thank you, Michelle. Our next panelist joining us is Valerie Denton. She is a third-year BFA candidate at the University of Idaho, and her BFA is focused on design, technology, and performance, and her interests are mainly in props and performance. With Treasure Valley Children's Theater, she first joined our team in Peter Pan Jr. in 2014, was also in Into the Woods Jr. and Seussical the Musical Jr., and she recently played Beth March in U of I's musical production of Little Women. Valerie Denton, tell us a story.
Okay, so I don't have a specific memory that I wanted to tell, but something that I've really just enjoyed from everything that I did with TVYT and TVCT is the fact that everyone has always been super friendly and caring. Like when you hear theater, sometimes you get the default of it being the drama group or anything like that. And in college, sometimes you meet people who are in this specific line of work just because they like to throw a little bit of sass around. But something I've always enjoyed about TVYT is the fact that no one's there for any personal, like, alternative motive, if you could say it that way. Everyone is just there to create fun art and to have a good time. And I've made some of my best friends there. So I just want to throw that out as my memory, sort of like a thank you.
Oh, I love that memory, Valerie, and I think that's a true testament to who we see ourselves as a company and as a group of artists, so thank you for that. Oh, Sarah Williams. Sarah is currently a sophomore attending Western Washington University as a double major in theater arts, concentration in acting and English literature, because why not be an overachiever, Sarah? When she was younger, she was involved in many Treasure Valley Children's Theater programs, including Peter Pan Jr., Annie Jr., Into the Woods Jr., and she helped assistant teach a number of classes. She helped stage manage quite a few of our adult company professional productions. And Sarah says that TVCT is where she began her theatrical journey. One day, she hopes to gain enough experience and knowledge to teach theater at the college level as a professor. Sarah, tell us a story.
Thank you, Autumn, for that wonderful introduction. First of all, I just want to say I miss all of your faces, and this just gives me so much joy to see all of you right now. Especially being out of state, it's hard for me to get back home and see the people that I, interacted with in Boise, and so it's just good to see your faces. To answer your question, one of my most favorite memories would probably have to be my very first audition, because my very first audition ever was actually with Peter Pan Jr. And I was really, really nervous. And this is kind of a long story, but I'll kind of cut it short. My mom, I didn't really want to do it, but my mom convinced me at the last moment to make me go and audition. And so I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. My sister's doing this. My sister's the theatery person. I'll just, I'm here to support her, and I'll do this because my mom wants me to, and somehow she's convinced me. I still don't remember how, for the life of me. And so I went to the audition, and the person before me, I could hear them and singing, and it was incredible. It was probably one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. And so instantly my throat gets dry. I'm nervous. And I'm like, oh boy, this is my first audition, and the person that went before me is incredible. And why would they choose me for any role? And I remember walking in, and there was three people. I believe it was Autumn, Cheryl, and I can't remember the third person that was there. But you were all, very warm and welcoming, and just like the most unbelievable calm sensation kind of came over me when I walked into that room. And I just felt at home and at peace with myself. And it was amazing. And I wouldn't be where I am today without TVCT.
Sarah, you're gonna make me cry. Stop it. Thank you for sharing that. That is really lovely and obviously very heartfelt. So I'm gonna introduce our next panelist before I cry. Grace. Grace Sathoff is a sophomore at Boston University, where she is pursuing a BFA in costume production, as well as a BS in film and television. At Treasure Valley Children's Theater, she graced the stage as Jafar in Aladdin Jr. and provided production support for How to Eat Like a Child, Our Fall Ball, and The Lion King Jr., and Willy Wonka Jr., and she's got the best hair. Let's give it up for Grace. Tell us a story.
Good. Hi, yeah, my name's Grace. Yeah, so I've been doing, I think the only time I performed at PBCT was in Aladdin with Justin. So that was a great time. And I think my favorite, or the moment I remember most, actually came, the last show I did, I believe, was Willy Wonka. I was pulled in last minute by Mary, who sent me an email and was like, hi, do you want to help out with some production support? And it was just for Tech Week and the performance. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Of course. I love you. I'll do anything. And I just remember there was a lot of challenges that we had to overcome. And it was a big learning challenge and being pragmatic and and sort of like organizing like what has to get done like first, and sort of like how to designate work. And I remember like learning so much from the people who were like in that room, from Mary and from Allison and from you and from Shannon, about how to sort of like structure theater and like how to feel helpful. And I just remember, even though like being pulled on so late, like I felt like such a crucial part of that production because of the things that like I had to accomplish during that run of the show. And it just sort of like always taught me a lesson, like in theater, that like even backstage, like the smallest, like even one person doing one thing has like the biggest significance on like the whole impact of the show, because like without that one thing, the show's not going to happen. So I just remember feeling so freaking important when I pulled off that confetti cannon gun. I was like, yeah, this is my one job and I'm going to do it so good. And I think also, as I think Valerie or Michelle said, just like the lifelong friendships. I got to see Molly Castiel, who played Jasmine in Aladdin, when I went to New York before Corona happened. And it's just so nice to be just have that continuous bond, and I treasure that a lot.
Yeah, once a TVCT kid, always and forever, no matter where you go, we will find you. Thank you, Grace. That was wonderful. And I can already hear Mary going, we have to use that part of the video to like explain how important every role is. I know she's like nodding her head right now. All right, our final panelist. I'm really excited to introduce Justin Ravago. Justin is a student at the University of Utah with a major in business economics. He performed in several productions with our theater, including Peter Pan Jr., Seussical Jr., Annie Jr., Into the Woods Jr., and Aladdin Jr., where he starred in the title role. Justin, tell us a story.
One of my favorite memories was in Seussical. I think it was the Friday night performance. And as we were performing, the sun was like setting, and it was just like the weather was gorgeous. Everyone was just really present in the moment. I was there with my sister, and like my family was like in the audience too. And there's like this line that JoJo says where she says like, and then the sky became pink, and then the sky was actually pink because the sun was setting. And I just remember what it felt like to be really like present in that moment. And when I go to the park sometimes and I see that stage, and then I remember, wow, I was on that stage. And it's cool that that's like, it's like something that's like there in the park. It's like a memory. Like when I go to the park, I think of Seussical.
I love that story so much. I want to share that picture with you guys. Wow. Okay. So hopefully you got a little bit of a sense, those of you listening in, of just the breadth and scope of the knowledge that we have on our call today. I want to start with Michelle. And the rest of you get a little prep time to think about your answer to this question. But why did you select the program you selected? And tell us about the audition process, if you had to audition. And if you didn't, tell us about the process. How'd you get in? Michelle, you take it away.
Thank you. Good question. I struggled a lot actually choosing colleges. I didn't know what I wanted at first. Had to do a lot of brain thinking about where I wanted to be, what I wanted to study specifically, what part of theater, what I wanted the program to look like. I mean, there's so many variables. But what I narrowed it down to, and what I felt was important to me, is I wanted to be able to do a diversity of theater. So I just a reminder, I go to Sarah Lawrence College, and at Sarah Lawrence, their kind of thing, their shtick, is you can study all aspects of theater. So I study not just acting or not just directing, but I study acting, directing, writing, sound design, light design, stage management, run crew. I mean, these are all things that I've luckily been able to do this year. So finding a diversity of theater was really important to me. finding a good academic experience was actually really important to me. I think people who are good thinkers are good artists, and it was something that I wanted to continue. And I wanted, this sort of didn't end up playing in the final decision as much, but I wanted to be in a community of theater and have connections to a good arts community that I could continue after college. So Sarah Lawrence is in Bronxville, New York, which is a tiny town, but it's about half an hour by train away from New York City. So I'm not in New York City, but close to it, and I think that's great. I didn't audition for Sarah Lawrence specifically. The way they did it is they had, like, some schools will do an art portfolio, like you'll submit like a video or, you know, a creative writing piece. And so for Sarah Lawrence, it didn't impact my admission decision. It was just part of what they looked at. But I did audition for schools in general because I was looking at some other schools that were audition only. So the way I did that, some schools will have private auditions, but I went to college unifieds, which are just sort of giant auditions, like a conglomerate of many schools will show up for a couple of days in New York and Chicago and LA, and you can audition for a bunch. I auditioned for 2. And so what I did is I flew to LA and I auditioned for Emerson College and actually Boston University, Grace's school. And that, sorry, there are so many things to talk about. For those, both of those, it was a large group audition in front of a panel, a couple admissions personnel for each school, and I did 2 monologues for each school. I ended up getting admitted to Emerson and not Boston, but it was just something that impacted my decision because there were lots of different types of schools that I was looking at, and some require auditions, some don't. And in the end, doesn't necessarily impact the quality of the school, I think I've found. And so I got into Sarah Lawrence mostly on a writing sample, but they also looked at arts. So that's a lot of information. Yes, I auditioned, but not for Sarah Lawrence, and that is the final takeaway.
So a quick follow-up then, Michelle.
Sure.
These cohort auditions where you just sort of go and audition for lots of programs, are those offered like regularly? Like what's that, like how do you find out about those?
Yeah, so this was, when I was researching college, I was like, what is this? What are unifieds? What, I have never heard of this. And I had to do a little bit of research, and luckily I had some friends who had done it. I believe they're offered only in the spring. I might be wrong about that. But there's a lot of like really specific logistical information on each school. And for example, I know NYU auditions, obviously Emerson auditions, and so they'll have a date to sign up for an audition online. I auditioned at the end of February, I believe. So like I said, I flew down to LA, and I did not know what I was walking into at all. It was a really pleasant experience, actually, made some friends, but it was definitely a big process. I think those auditions, college auditions through Unifieds, are sort of its own beast. So if anybody has specific questions about that, you can feel free to ask me now or at a later time, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some more specifics.
I love it. Thank you.
I also went to a Unified, but I went to the one in New York. So if you have any other questions, I can also answer those. And I did mine for production, like portfolio review stuff. So I can also answer any questions because they're really complicated and very weird.
So talk more about that, Grace. So you went to Unifieds. Is that how you got into Boston?
I actually, so I was able to do all, most colleges, this is more technical stuff that you'll have to worry about, and it might possibly change. But most colleges are on what's called the common application. So you'll apply to the college, and if it is an audition school, they'll either require you to send in a video, do a Skype interview, or apply in person. The only college that I know requires you to do in person is Carnegie Mellon. I was able to video audition for our Skype call for my portfolio for like all of the other big ones like DePaul, NYU, Boston, California, UC And but Carnegie Mellon insisted that you do it in person. So I went to a Unified in New York. It was the only one that was open. And it's basically kind of like an extreme. You go in, you'll get your number, and you'll just go around auditioning for different schools. But they don't sort of market these things through the college. They'll oftentimes be on like a separate website that's sort of not connected to it. But a lot of these kids who come from sort of like these very urban, dense backgrounds are like, oh yeah, I'm going to the one, in New York and Chicago and LA. Like, I'll switch you my time slot, to like audition for this and for this and for this. So it's sort of more, it's very much like that theater, like, connectivity-ness of, like talking to some person, talking to someone else. But now that like I'm in college and you sort of like have these connections, if anyone, needs to audition for something, feel free to reach out. But that was the only one that I did in person, and having an in-person audition experience is very different than doing it online. And I've got to recommend, if you can do it, in person, I would highly recommend doing that.
The thing about Unifieds for me, if I can just continue to jump on,
Yeah.
is that it helped me learn a little bit about the vibe of the school. I mean, they always say when you're auditioning, you're also auditioning the school, because this is a school that you might be getting your education at for the next 4 years. And so just looking at and talking to administrators from each school that I auditioned for, I was very clearly able to see what the next 4 years could look like just from talking to people in each school and how they ran their auditions. And I think that's an important thing to consider, because it's Unifieds, if you choose to go to Unifieds and audition for colleges like that, it's a scary experience, but it's also for you to figure out what you want in your school.
That's really helpful. Thank you guys for sharing that perspective. Sarah, I saw a lot of head nodding from you. So do you have some similar experience in your selection and audition process that you want to share?
Mine is a little more complicated. I did a lot of research because I really wasn't sure which school I wanted to go to. I knew that I really wanted a liberal arts education. I knew I didn't want conservatory because I didn't want the possibility of getting kicked out of the school and losing all of the education and degree works in that school. And so that was part of the reason my school actually doesn't require any auditions to get into the theater program. And that was part of the reason why I chose to go with a non-audition school, was because a lot of the audition schools that I looked into that I was interested in tended to have a cutoff at like junior year with if you didn't like make the cut with classes or whatnot. And so I had faith in myself that I could get through that, but I didn't want the possibility of it to stiffen my education. And so like I said, I did a lot of research, and one of my great friends, oh my goodness, one of my favorite YouTubers, her name is Catherine Steele, and she's a theater YouTuber. If I see a couple of nods, y'all know who I'm talking about. She is so educated and she has so much information. So I spent so much time just like listening to her and listening to the information that she had. So I cannot give her justice, or I cannot do her justice. But if you want more information specifically, I recommend going there as well, in your multitude of resources. And another thing that came down to choosing my school was money. Because I want to be a professor, I know that I'm going to have to go to master's or PhD programs, and those are going to be hecka expensive. And those are the kind of programs that you really want the more expensive schools, just because they tend to have the better programs, at least what I looked into. And so money was a big issue, and I applied to a lot of schools and hoped for a lot of scholarships and didn't get as many as I wanted. But my current school that I am currently attending offered me the WUI scholarship, and that means that they take 150% of in-state tuition, and that is your cost of tuition. So that was the only way that I could actually afford the current school that I'm going to right now, and I'm really grateful for that because I'm really enjoying my experience here so far.
Great. Thank you. Valerie, I saw you snapping your fingers. Why don't you jump in and talk a little bit about your selection process?
Yeah, so to go off of Sarah a little bit, money was definitely a big factor for college. Just to put it in comparison, I am a 15-minute drive away from WSU, Washington State University, and the money that I was lucky enough to get from my parents, that can pay for my entire college career here, but it would pay for 1 year over at WSU, which is absolutely insane. And that was with the WUI. But something that really helped me like choose U of I was the fact that my junior year in high school, my mom had reached out to U of I and said, hey, is it possible that my daughter could come up and sit in on an acting class? And let me just say, I wouldn't have the college career that I do right now without my parents. It doesn't hurt to ask for anything. I sat in on that acting class, and it was a assistant student teacher, and he was a master's student, and one of the main acting teachers here teaching that class. And I just fell in love, and I knew this is where I wanted to be. When it finally came down to choosing, I was choosing between BSU and U of I. And I went with U of I because I liked their program, but I also went with it because they offer a Bachelor in Fine Arts. And if I were to go to BSU, I would have only been able to get a Bachelor in Science. The F in BFA, the fine part, really just means that you're concentrated solely on what you do. It's just to make your degree look a little fancier, honestly. But my school did not require auditions, but they do require auditions to get into the BFA program. So every semester we re-audition, except for this semester. We re-audition and we get to find out if we move on to the next semester still being a BFA candidate. You're only a candidate until you actually graduate with it, or if you're basically pushed down to a Bachelor of Science again. I have known very little people to actually be kicked out of the BFA program once accepted, but to actually be accepted, you have to work pretty hard. Yeah, also the fact that it's 6 hours away from home, so it's just far enough that I feel like I'm away from family and on my own, but I'm just close enough that if an emergency were to happen, I can drive home. So that was a comfort too when I was leaving.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I appreciate you explaining sort of the difference. I know when I went into college, I was a first generation college student, so I didn't understand all these acronyms, BS and BFA and AA, yeah. And I'm like, wait, what? So thank you for taking some time to educate us about that. Yeah. Justin, you've taken a little bit of a different path. I'm really excited. So tell us your selection and major story.
So, the way that I sort of went about it was I was sort of looking at colleges. I didn't look at very many because anytime you wanted to look at a college, it requires like an essay application. So every time you wanted to add a college, it's another essay. Another college, it's another essay. So I really only narrowed it down to very few, and it was the University of Utah and the University of Idaho and Boise State University. I'd looked at University of Idaho, and I liked it because it had a big campus, but something changed, sorry. But then, and I liked it, but then when I was realizing I was like, when I went to like see other colleges and like tour them and stuff, I think I also saw UCLA. I didn't end up applying because it was like expensive, but I I still toured it. And I was realizing that anytime I toured a college, I had sort of a really similar feeling every time I went. It was just like they sort of manufacture that feeling about like where you go. So it sort of made me realize, oh, wherever I go, specifically campus wise, it doesn't matter. And so then it ended up just being about like programs and then distance. University of Utah was 4 hours away. It's near a big-ish city, a little bit bigger than Boise. And I thought that that would provide a lot of opportunities for like jobs in the future if I wanted to apply. University of Utah is also a research institution. And since I wasn't sure about what my major was going to be, I liked the option that there would be research opportunities available no matter what major I was in.
So expound a little bit on the major selection.
Oh, the major selection. So I initially picked computer science because both of my parents did computer science. And so that just seemed like a natural like flow. But when I was in the environment doing like the work, I realized, wow, I don't think I can imagine myself doing this work forever, like 4 years, let alone the rest of my life. And so then I switched over to business economics because it was more math heavy and I liked math. And it was the math that I liked to do instead of a lot of like coding, and the language was just really hard. Yeah, it's a little different.
And I love that it's different. And Justin knows this. We're going to dive into it a little bit deeper because my path is very similar. I didn't study theater in my undergrad. I did my associate's degree, but then I opted to do some other types of education and still stay engaged in the arts, which I know Justin's going to share a little bit about as we get into it. But thank you all for chiming in about that first big question, which is the why and the how. So, and I am going to mess around a little bit with my share screen. So just be prepared for that craziness to happen because we're recording and I don't know what it's going to look like. Ooh, Valerie, raise your hand, girl, talk.
Well, I just want to bounce off of Justin a little bit. So one of the schools that Justin toured is the school that I go to. And I think that's just like a big thing that I would like to put out there is if you're going to tour a college, don't do it like you can, but don't do it during the expected times. Like go see them when you can actually talk one-on-one with professors, because like I feel like you might personally get more out of that than the manufactured feeling. Because I know personally here at U of I, like what Justin came up to a booth while I was working at it and was chatting with us. And I think like that manufactured feeling is definitely super true. We have this trolley that goes around on campus, but it only truly goes around campus fully during the weeks that kids are here. And we have Greek Row, we have Greek life here, and they'll be like out playing football on the lawns, and the girls will be out there on their laptops studying, but that truly only happens to the amount that it does on those weeks when people are coming to visit. So it's not an honest and true feeling. I was outside of a frat house one time, and these two guys were throwing a football, and they asked each other when their shift was done. So it's just that feeling of manufactured that you can get away from if possible. So I understand, Justin.
That's great advice. Yeah, go not during those come see us at our best moments, right? Like come during our dress rehearsal.
Are there also any design and production people? My only biggest thing that I didn't do, which would have helped me so much, because I didn't audition. I did. I'm the design and production programs require you to submit a portfolio. Take pictures, take process photos at the beginning, take process photos at the middle, take process photos at the end, like when it's not on stage, get photos when it's on stage, like get the insides, I just think having documentation of things that you've worked on, especially even if you think it's not important, is always so much better to have then wishing you could go back and document those things, and just like keep a folder on your computer, on your iPad, just be like portfolio. And that way when the time comes, you will thank yourself so much for those things, because it's a college applications, at least for me, for like there was 6 steps you had to go through, and just having yourself be organized will make that process so much easier and just relieve you of a lot of unnecessary stress.
Such good advice. Thank you. So, believe it or not, friends, we're like 40 minutes into this gig and we just finished question 1, which I think is okay because we wrote these questions with the intent of getting the real good juicy stuff at the beginning. So, let's jump into question 2. Michelle, I'm going to knock it over to you first. Describe the experience so far. Is it competitive? Like, are you learning things you didn't expect that you would be learning? Talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sarah Lawrence offers kind of a unique theater experience, maybe. I could answer all these questions in a lot of different ways. I would say the thing that distinguishes my theater program is you get, this is probably all of them, but you get out of it what you put in. So it's not particularly competitive. It's not what they call conservatory style, where you're just solely focused on acting, because that can have a reputation of, a little bit more cutthroat. It is liberal arts. Anybody can audition for productions. But there are a lot of productions. So I've been able to get a lot of hands-on experience this year, which I think has been really great. And like I mentioned, I think on question 1, not just in acting, in my first, 3/4 of a year, I acted in productions, I was in readings, I did lighting design for the first time, not having taken a class, they just threw me in. I did sound design again for the first time, I directed, I'm writing outside of school, and I did run crew, and I was able to do all of those different things in a year, which is exactly what I wanted. So I would say that that's the atmosphere of my school, and that's the program experience. There's a lot of student produced theater and a lot of ability to just make your own stuff if you want to, and that's, I think, exactly what I was aiming for. So it's not necessarily competitive, it's just if you want to put the work in, you could go a little farther.
Thank you. Grace, how about at your program?
There we go. Okay, I've been taking Zoom classes for 2 years, but can't do this. Okay. Yeah, I go to sort of the opposite school of Michelle. I go to a conservatory program. So when you audition with a certain thing in mind. You don't have to go into that thing. Your freshman year, you basically spend each quarter in a different segment. Like, again, this is for design and production. Performance is similar. It's a BFA. You have to audition in. It's conservatory style. It's a little bit different than other BFA programs such as CMU or NYU, in that we have like guaranteed casting and like guaranteed design slots. And it's also not a cut program. So you're in it unless you drop out. But for us, you are training to become like, had to have the ability to basically go into the workforce right off the bat and do the job that you like came in doing. So like with our lighting designers or with our technical production students, like we have people who sort of go in and then like they'll come out and they'll work for, like Tate Towers or something. And we have a guy who graduated as a senior, and he, ended up working on like, Kanye's like a tour, doing like all of the mechanics for that. So it's sort of you're going to be very good at the thing you love doing, and you're going to go out and you're going to do it. And so it's hard because there's sort of a burnout period where you're constantly doing one thing and you sort of have to find. That's why I decided to dual major, so you sort of have another creative outlet, because it can be stressful, especially just going to college for the first time. I think that was the biggest thing to overcome versus like competitiveness, because really you're kind of all in the same boat. So if you end up going to a conservatory program, my biggest advice would just be to like connect with the peers and people in your program, because you're all going through the same thing and you all think you're alone, and you all think that this is like, you know, the craziest thing. So just really, you know, making some strong friendships, and also those friendships will help you sort of mimic sort of this workplace environment, because you're working with the same people. It's a very, I go to a very, very small program. There's only about 20 people in my grade, who are like the design and production students. So it really also teaches you how to work with someone over and over and over, and like work past, you know, sort of workplace disagreements, or how to work with all personality types, and how to structure where people fit best, and how to be productive, but also how to grow in a learning environment. I think that's also one of the reasons why I really enjoy the program.
That's awesome. Sarah, I see you like emoting empathy to Grace's response. So I want to toss it over to you. Tell us a little bit about your program. What's the experience like? Is it competitive? And are you learning something you didn't expect to learn?
So similar to Grace, I am also a double major, mostly because I'm an English literature major, and the classes up till now haven't really been what I was looking for, but now I'm finally getting into the meat of my major that I absolutely love, where we just have discussions about philosophers and how language is created and all this stuff. I'm really enjoying my classes right now, as you can tell. Um, and so I really wanted a way to look at theater in a different light, and I thought English was a great route to go. My acting program is set up in a interesting way, similar to how Michelle's is set up. There's a lot of student productions. Anyone can jump in and apply for technical positions or audition for those acting spots. There's a ton of just like student-run organizations that, you know, have things going on all the time. There are students, you know, holding workshops for like musical theater dancing and et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very strong student community, which I thought was very important, because your peers are who you're going to be working with in the future, and you got to build that community to have it in the future, right? And so my theater major is essentially, it's set up like this. You have set classes, which are general general credits. So there's a technology class, there's a directing class, there's a dramatic writing class, and then there's like the basic acting classes, and I believe there's a theater topics class as well, but there's a certain number of classes that you have to take in order to get the base part of the major done. And then there are certain tracks within that major that you can go into. So I'm on the performance track, but there's also the directing track, there's a stage management track, there's a directing, already said directing, but technical theater, and within that there's like lighting and costuming, etc. And so there's a lot of different things you can do within the program. And even if you're on one track, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get different classes from different parts of the program, which I really, really enjoy. Let's see. What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
I think just it sounds like there's a lot of things you're learning. I was taking some notes because I'm hearing you say like you have to be willing to try new things, and you have to be really organized and understand all these different tracks and how you could fit into them and what you could take from them. I think the other question really is just, is it really competitive? Like, do you feel like you're able to access the experiences you want to access, or are you competing for spots?
That's an interesting question. Spots, as in like acting spots, I would say there is a little bit of a competitive edge, but I think every college program has that. I don't think that's anything specific to my particular program. I think that's just a thing in general. You know, theater is competitive and that's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly competitive in the sense that if you don't put in the work, you don't get anything out of it. So similar to how Michelle was talking about, you need to put in the work and you need to put in the time and the studio hours and just everything to really get the best education that you can.
I think that is a perfect toss over to Valerie, because I know my experience with the U of I theater department is that it can be really competitive. But what do you want to add, Valerie?
Okay, so the U of I theater program is competitive, but it depends on what parts and what time during the year and a whole bunch of different factors like that. Today, we actually just received our season announcement for next year, as long as the world has turned right side up. And there are some shows on there that we all knew were going to be on there. One of them was ours, canceled this last show that we were supposed to do this semester. So we bought the rights, we're doing it later. But then other ones we weren't expecting at all. Someone from our theater department actually passed away recently, and she was a recent graduate. And the last show that she personally worked on is The Wolves. And that is a full female cast. She did a production of it in Boise, and she loved it so much that we're doing it in her honor. We didn't expect to be doing this though. She passed away almost a month ago at this point, few weeks. I honestly can't remember. I'm inside all day. So that was a recent discovery for us. And we found out now that one of our shows is pre-cast because of this last semester, and they'll just be replacing the parts of people who are graduating. 2 of our productions are a full female cast, and then we have a show that's like a whole bunch of sort of shorter plays that we're working on. So I don't know exactly about that one, but that means that there's really only 1 or 2 shows that men can now audition for in this next season and be cast in. So for them, it's competitive right now. This last semester, this last year, we had 1 musical. And that is the first musical that we have done in a very long time. And that was Little Women. And for singers, if they didn't get into that musical, they weren't guaranteed one this next year. And we now know that we don't. So it's competitive. It really just depends on where we are at one point. But I would say when it comes to, let's see, I have like a whole bunch of little tiny notes here so I don't get lost, because I do very easily.
Totally fair. Your program so far, and are you learning something you hadn't expected?
Yes. So I'm a completely different person than I was in my senior year, and for better, for worse, all that jazz. But I just personally think that's because of, let's see. I personally think that's because of the things that I'm learning that I didn't expect to learn. I'm gonna go a little bit on a tangent here and come back. So personally, I think that when touring colleges and when trying to find out what you want to do, you should, if you're going for the acting route, really look into the type of acting that they teach. I didn't do that before I came here, and I'm happy with what I ended up with, and I'm glad that this is the route that I got. But there are a lot of different types of acting out there that I didn't really bother to think about beforehand. And we teach the Stanislavski system, which is living truthfully in the given circumstances. So it's a lot about human honesty and connection, which I really like that type of work. But for some people, they just want to go up and do their comedy piece and be able to play and bounce off of someone. They're not worried about the personal connection. They're just trying to have some fun and make a laugh, which some theater definitely needs that. So something I wasn't expecting to learn about myself in college was the fact that I would be so different. So we have that. And then I'm also required to take some general education courses, just like Sarah said. It's sort of the first half. We have this thing that if anyone is about to be in high school or is in high school, it's called Cornerstone. And it's basically a required class where you have to learn about how to be a student. We have the same thing here in college. And we're required to take one class, and it could be on whatever subject we wanted off of a certain list. And I took a class that was on love and happiness. So we read a whole bunch of different things like A Doll's House and Medea, and it wasn't even a theater course. And we were learning about the human connection and why sometimes people are better in arranged marriages or not, and like talking about what are the pros and cons. And then we also talked about why people get divorces. And these are all things that as an actor, I can personally take. And now I can go farther in depth with characters when I'm doing script analysis to understand them. So I'm learning about people and myself, which I didn't really expect too much. I expected theater, but really when it comes to college, like I think one of the biggest lessons is learning who you are and where you want to go with your life, because most people change their major at least once while they're here.
Oh, Valerie, that is, girl, you just described my personal story too in college. I'm glad to hear it hasn't changed that much. And it's a perfect segue to toss it over to Justin. And Justin, you're going to take this home for us, buddy, because we're running out of time. So I want to invite, if you're listening and you have a burning question, drop it in the chat right now. But Justin, this is the perfect transition because I want you to tell us, like, how are you connecting to the arts while you're still studying business economics? Talk to us.
So something that was kind of like, I guess something that I didn't personally like expect. I'm surprised I didn't expect it though. But when I got to campus, I realized that theater was sort of like theater people took ownership of it. So it was like, it felt like a place that was for like theater majors only. And that surprised me. And I was like, whoa, theater is supposed to be a place that's for everyone. So it was kind of difficult trying to find different ways of creative outlet. So I've been the marching band because I've been doing band for a long time. So I was in the marching band. There's an a cappella group on campus, so it's like pitch perfect. So I got to do that. In order to actually participate in theater, in terms of theater, what I did was when I saw a show, they had like a talk back. And so I talked to one of the professors and I said, I want to do theater on campus, but I'm not a theater major. Could you like sneak me into something or help me with some stuff? And then they connected me to this page where they like connect people to theater resources on campus. So once I talked to the right person, then I was getting more access to resources that normally would only be available for majors. So things that are sometimes to find what you want, you're going to have to look for things that aren't as like obvious or try to talk to people to get the resources that you need or the experiences that you want to have.
Man, you just like drove that train into the station, because that is the reoccurring theme I've heard all of our panelists say, which is you make it happen. Like what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Nobody's going to hand you the golden ticket. Sorry, Willy Wonka. But that isn't the way that this world works, right? Like you get what you put in, and you talk to people and you put yourself out there. And it's so reassuring as a founder of a theater company who really created theater not because I want to create the next most amazing Broadway stars and like production powerhouses, although I guess that's going to be a really nice afterthought. But because I want young people to recognize that you get out of life what you put into it, and it is going to be hard work. And I'm so insanely proud of our alumni, but I'm going to wish you all a very lovely, safe quarantine good night. And check our Facebook page for some of those fun videos and photos we've been posting through Idaho Gives, and stay well and safe. And I love you all, and thank you.
Bye, guys. Good to see you.
Bye. Love you all.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Autumn.